We're live. I'm like 5 seconds behind the rest of the world. All right. Hello, Thrivers. How are you doing? Welcome to Thriving Thursday here with the Thriving Marriage Family. And I'm Heather Choate here with Mark Johnston, our marriage expert here. And we did an awesome poll in the group yesterday. And the poll was asking whether comfort or commitment came first in restoring your marriage and having a healthy relationship. And so we had a lot of people weigh in with that. And over 100, last time I checked, it was over 100 people had weighed in saying that commitment came first, and a very small percentage said that comfort came first. So this is going to be really fun.
Yeah,
This is going to be
absolutely.
fun.
Because I actually disagree. That's why it's fun, right?
Right. Exactly. And I think this is really going to help clarify things for some people and give us some really big ahas. Okay. So, Mark, let's talk about what is one of the most common mistakes that we see when people are wanting to work on their marriage and their spouse is pulling away from the relationship. Because that's what we're talking about here in restoring a relationship. What's one of the most common mistakes that we see?
Well, what I see is when it gets to the point where someone's saying, "Hey, I'm might be done here," they're, they've already been thinking about this for some time. Now, one of the things that I see with every single individual and every single couple that I meet with, the big issue is that they are unable to discuss or bring up their concerns and problems, either one person, the other, or both. And here we have, this idea that, okay, if my wife or husband has been drifting away, I just got to get them to commit to the marriage. But see, the thing is, like I said, they've been thinking about this for a long time. They've been talking it up to themselves. They've been trying to convince themselves that it's the right idea. Otherwise, they wouldn't have shared that. Very often you'll see some signs, they'll see some little mentions here and there ahead of time, but when they get to the point where they're saying, "I'm done," they've already convinced themselves. And so trying to get them to work on the marriage, basically to recommit to the marriage, it's just not going to work. They're like I said, they've already given all these reasons to themselves why they can't work on the marriage, or they're saying to themselves, "I've already tried working on the marriage and it didn't work." So, I mean, that's, yeah, very common.
That's it in a nutshell, right?
Mhm.
So, you and I were talking earlier. Mark and I were meeting, and we were talking about our program and making sure that we're, serving to the very best of our ability. And so we were walking through the milestones that need to be met for like a restoration in a marriage. And it was interesting because, Mark, you were telling me, and maybe you could share this with everyone, like what commitment is in marriage up until this point. Like, where does this kind of commitment level come from?
Yeah. So you know, my thought on this is commitment is going to come from a couple different places. When you are first getting to know someone, first starting to date them, your commitment to that person, just to be quite honest, is only going to go as far as how much you enjoy and value that relationship. And this is why, when couples are really new, people sometimes cycle through relationships really quick. They'll say, "Okay, I'm going to, dive into this one a little bit. Oh, it's not that great, so I'll pull out." It's really easy to do that because you don't have a lot of that commitment. As soon as it's not enjoyable, people tend to pull back. Now, how much you commit to that may vary based on lots of different factors. But yeah, that's item number one. Commitment comes from enjoyment and value. But the other one, what happens to these marriages that have been going on a long time and they're not really enjoying, they're just kind of roommates? Why are they still together? Well, the other part of commitment there comes from all these things outside of the marriage. Things that are not in between you and your spouse. Things like the fact that you have kids together, the fact that you share finances. This is outside of the relationship. The importance that you place on marital vows, maybe religious beliefs, all these other factors. And these things tend to moderate a marriage. Like as it kind of goes into its little dips, it's what actually keeps people together. And it's when a marriage is going really well, this is a great thing. It gives a sense of security. It gives a sense of, certainty. Like, I know my husband or wife is going to be there because we have all of these other things that are binding us together. But when you drop that commitment, you drop that enjoyment and that value, after a time, though, that other type of commitment tends to wear thin, tends to be valued less and less. And so that's when it's at that point when all those other things just aren't really keeping you together and you don't have that enjoyment anymore. That's when people say, okay, I'm out. And I forget what your initial question is.
No, that was exactly it. Yeah, it was what the commitment was that like keeps people together. And I think that you explained that really well. I see a couple of you are watching us live, so give us a thumbs up if you can hear and see us okay, and if this is making sense. I know it's a little bit of an unusual way of looking at things. However, we found that this like big aha moment here and understanding this core principle is literally the foundation of how we're able to completely transform and restore relationships. So oftentimes, like Mark just described, maybe someone's committed to a certain level, like religiously. We often get that. And that's not a bad thing. Like Mark's saying, that's a really positive and good thing. But when the comfort is gone and all you're left is that like grit, determination to stick it out because of this external, moral obligation or a financial obligation or to the children obligation, then things can become really, really tense, right? And when one person starts to pull away, we often see, and I felt this myself, that, well, hold on, they committed to this relationship. Shouldn't that mean something, right? And they try to use commitment as leverage to get the person back. Am I right, Mark?
Yeah. It's almost like they're trying to logic them back to working on their relationship. And what is essentially, the reason to leave is an emotional decision, trying to convince, well, just in general, if you're trying to convince someone to be with you, you're going about that the wrong way. And I like to compare this sort of situation to when you're first dating, because in many ways, people still like to be treated like an individual person, like you probably treated your spouse when you're first dating. If you had to convince your boyfriend or girlfriend to be with you, if like you had to give all these reasons, like, you know what, you should stay because we have this good thing going. As soon as you feel like you're having to convince someone, it's over. It's just that approach will not work.
Right, exactly. So is that clear now? That to everyone else watching, and you can weigh in your comments now or later when you watch this, but that comfort level has to come first. So we know that demanding commitment right off the bat is going to scare away someone that we're just first dating, right? That would freak them out. Like, it's our first date. So how long do you want to be in this? And how serious are you? And will you be here in 6 months? And are you going to do this and this and this, right?
When do you
like that would totally backfire.
Yeah. And I was saying, adding to that list, like, and when do you think we should get married, on the first date? Well, that would be really...
When can I expect this on my finger, right? That just absolutely would not work. And so we like to compare when your spouse is pulling away from you, that we have to kind of get back to that beginning of a relationship, and you need to make things safe and comfortable first. So that's one of the first things that we teach, right, Mark? That's one of our very first pillars, and it's one of the first milestones that we look for in a relationship.
I'm going to illustrate.
Go ahead.
Here. So I just want to explain why comfort before commitment. So let's pretend, let's take another relationship. Let's pretend, that you're in a business partnership. If you feel really uneasy around them and you feel just uncomfortable and things are really tense with that person, and they say, you know what, I think we should take this business partnership to the next level. I think we should really, invest further together. I think we should work even closer together. But you just don't feel comfortable around them. What's the likelihood that you're going to want to invest further? Or let's take other examples, even within a relationship. Let's say that you're saying, okay, I think the solution here is we need to have more dates. But let's say that there's not that comfort there. There's a lot of tension. You can hardly talk together. You can't open up with each other, what's the likelihood that those dates are actually going to feel any good? And so, people go into this thing and they're saying, okay, we're not connecting, things are really uncomfortable, get on more dates. And then they get on that date and they're like, I don't know. What happens here is people say, well, I tried and we just don't have that love anymore and it's just gone. And it's just, the thing is, they're just solving problems out of order. And that's the only reason why that situation is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was gold, Mark. Just got to applaud you for that. That was so well said. I really liked the business partnership analogy there, because that can something that we can really relate. Put yourself in your spouse's shoes, right? Is this going to make them want to be closer to you? You demanding that they stay true to their marriage commitment, or is that going to push them further away, right? And so what we got to look at is what's going to make things safe and comfortable, first of all. And now we got a couple questions here. So comments here still secret in the group? Yes. So this live stream goes only to this group. And so the comments stay here in this group. And then how do you recoup if you initially did that approach? So I think this question means if you initially demanded that they stay, if you were initially demanding commitment, how do you recoup? That is an excellent question. Mark,
yeah. So basically the underlying, I'm always looking at, okay, what is the message that's received? What's the underlying message? Even if you're saying like one thing, like, hey, this is great, commit to the marriage, how are they receiving that? My guess is when you said, okay, you need to commit to the marriage, and they're saying, I'm done. My guess, because I hear this so often, is they're probably saying to themselves, they're not listening to me. They don't respect what I'm saying. They don't value my opinion. Don't they hear me, what I'm saying? I want to be done. And so if you want to fix that, the underlying message that you need to be sending out constantly, consistently, is quite the opposite. Is, you know what? I want to understand your perspective. I want to hear you out. I really value what you have to say. I get what you're saying. I understand you. And as soon as they kind of accept, okay, my husband, my wife actually does want to hear me out and actually, can actually take my perspective, at least just for a moment, that's when it's going to start repairing that damage there.
Absolutely. And I just want to honor whoever posted that here. I'm not able to see names anymore with this new platform, but just because that, there's a lot of, desperation and frustration and a lot of emotions that go into this kind of situation when your spouse is pulling away, and then you look at it and you're like, oh no, I've just been doing basically all the wrong things. I've been pushing them away further. Is there really any hope now at all? Right? So I just really honor you for asking that question and let you know that in this situation, there's absolutely opportunity to turn things around. And again, Mark and I did a live stream last week on the 2 signs your marriage is over. So if you're wondering, is it too late for my marriage? Go watch that, because that's really going to give you some clarity on when is there hope and when is there not as much hope, right? I always believe that there's hope because I'm such an optimist, but there are some situations that are really much more challenging to reconnect and to restore your marriage. And in this situation, say you've been demanding commitment. You're saying, look, we got married. God expects it of us, the kids, the bills, how are we going to do this? You better step up and do your part here. If that's been the way that you've been acting and you know that it's not working, like, I would love to see if anyone's been doing that and it's worked, because I bet you that there's none. In this kind of situation when your spouse is pulling away and you're demanding commitment, it's not going to work. If you can prove me wrong, by all means, please do so. I'm totally open to that. But what we're trying to illustrate here is that there is such a better way, and it's not too late. You can use a lot of these opportunities that Mark and I, we coach people on how to do this specifically, given your specific situation, on how you can really make things safe and comfortable, again, for your spouse. So they're like, okay, wow, they actually understand me. They're hearing what I'm saying. I feel understood. I feel appreciated. And once they start to shift into that kind of energy about you, things are going to happen a lot faster.
Yep. It just starts to snowball after that.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Shock and emotion. Not sure what that comment is, but all right. Any final thoughts on this, Mark? I think we've covered it pretty well.
No, I think, yeah, unless we have questions, which it sounds like we don't. I can't see the questions, by the way, from my. Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, no worries. So again, I hope this is a big aha for some of you that might be stuck on this commitment issue. You might feel really justified, and to some extent, you might be. You know, I do believe that a marriage is for not just life, but for eternity, and that covenant, that promise, should last and should get you through these challenges. However, we also know that when we start using that as kind of leverage over our spouse, that's when things start to go south even faster. So what you want to do is to make sure that you are making things safe and comfortable for your spouse. And knowing how to do that is key. So we have some great resources available to you for that. I'll post a link to, we have a do's and don'ts to reconnect with your spouse to illustrate that even further. And we also have a masterclass called 5 Shifts to Save Your Marriage, even if your spouse is checked out. So if you haven't had the opportunity to delve into those resources yet, I highly recommend you do that. And as always, Mark and I are here to help you if you need that going further in your marriage. All right. Okay, very good. Very good. Yep. Hope you can help. Yeah. Step back and undo some of my commitment pushing. Awesome. Yep. You can absolutely do it. It is possible. And yes, we do record all these. The replays are always in the video section of this page. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mark. And thank you everyone for joining. Again, remember to go for the comfort over the commitment every time. All right. We'll talk to you soon.